streets of Chinatown in Hawaii are alive with celebration for Chinese New Year. Walter, a private detective, stays on high alert as he moves through the crowd. Discreetly, he slips a brown package into a mailbox. Then he leaves the area, only to be struck by a van moments later. The scene then shifts to James, a Navy SEAL commander running competency drills with a group of new cadets. They struggle to hold their position and keep surfacing too soon. Frustrated, James reprimands them sharply. Just then, he's informed that a call is waiting for him. It's the police. They tell him that his father is dead. The coroner explains that Walter was killed in a hit-and-run. An hour later, James returns home to his beachside house in Honolulu. His wife, Layla, greets him. At that moment, his children, Lonnie and Kai, come running in, excited to see him. After a long pause, James tells Layla that his father died in a hit-and-run, and that he already went to the morgue to identify the body. Layla's face falls. She apologizes softly and asks if he wants to talk about it, but James shakes his head. Layla sighs, then asks if he at least called his half-brother Johnny in Oklahoma. James mutters that Johnny won't answer his calls anyway. Layla urges him to at least leave a message. Meanwhile, in Oklahoma, Johnny, a police officer, comes home to find his longtime girlfriend, Valentina, packing her things. Confused, he asks what she's doing. Valentina tells Johnny she's tired of being ignored and frustrated that he never listens or puts in the effort like she does. She reminds him she's a grown woman managing a bank, while he wastes his time riding around on the bike instead of working. Then she asks him, "Do you even know what today is?" Johnny answers, "Wednesday." Valentina tells him it is her birthday. Johnny freezes, then quickly apologizes, calling her "shoo-shoo" to soften her anger.
Don't shoo me!
Desperate, he switches to Spanish, telling her he's sorry and that he loves her. For a moment, Valentina kisses him, but then slaps him, sharply reminding him that today is Friday and that she speaks Portuguese, not Spanish, because she's from Brazil. Johnny mutters that he didn't see the difference, as Portuguese is basically drunken Spanish. That night, he starts drinking while looking at the pictures of Valentina. Then he gets a call from Layla Hale. She introduces herself as James's wife and says it's kind of crazy that they never met. Johnny agrees. She then tells him that his father passed away yesterday. Johnny, after a moment of silence, admits that he assumed he had died years ago. Layla tells him the funeral is tomorrow, and they hope he will come. Johnny dryly says, "So James couldn't call me himself?" Layla reminds him that he and James have a complicated history with shared trauma. He tells her she sounds like a shrink. She admits she is a child psychologist. Johnny says he isn't a child and that he hardly talked to James in 10 years, and he hasn't been to Hawaii in 20 years. At that moment, two guys enter the bathroom. One of them ends the call and asks Johnny about the package his father sent him. Johnny points out that he hadn't talked to his father since he was a kid, and that he would never have sent him any package. Then one of them shows him his tattoo and asks what he sees. Johnny replies that it looks like a badly drawn horse. "It is a dragon, asshole," the man corrects him. Johnny, confused, asks, "Asshole dragon?" The man presses the knife. Johnny amends and says, "Yakuza, Japanese syndicate." Then, with cold precision, he fights them both. The third man fires from outside. Johnny decides to use one of the men as a barricade and takes the third one down. Johnny calmly asks the man not to desecrate his mother's shrine, but he does anyway. So Johnny kills him ruthlessly. He finishes the last one and looks at the tattoo and mumbles that it does look like a dragon. He takes the folded photo and looks at his mother, Kim. Then he turns back and sees Walter on the other side, then curses him. The next morning, Walter's funeral takes place. James looks around and sees the Yakuza syndicate and Mr. K's syndicate, a local gang operating in the area. Johnny comments that it is an interesting crowd. Nani, who is James and Johnny's cousin, replies that Walter was a private detective and he must have walked a fine line. Then she sees Johnny and welcomes him. James looks at his wife, who simply says, "Family is family." Then she greets him and introduces her children to him. Kai asks Johnny why they never met him. Johnny replies that his father doesn't like him. Then the girl asks if she can braid his hair. He says no. The two then start bickering, with James saying he looks like a gorilla dressed up in a gay bar. "You got old," Johnny casually responds. James counters by saying he got fat. Johnny says he can lose weight, but he will stay old as fuck. Layla gives James a look and he softens, telling Johnny he should have called and that he is glad he came.
No, I'm not. Layla told me to say that.
Then, a close family friend of the Hale family, Peter Maho, the governor who is also running for mayor, steps forward to deliver a few words about Walter. Peter acknowledges Johnny, saying it's been a long time. Johnny nods. Then he turns back and sees Mr. K's syndicate. After the funeral service, the family head to James's house. Johnny asks if he is staying at his mother's house, Malia's. James admits she passed away. Johnny tells him the house is a lot smaller than he remembers. James nods and says that, even so, Malia made room for Johnny. But Johnny tells him that he knows James hates him because Walter broke up James's family and slept with his mother, which James never let him forget, and it made him feel like a bastard. James sighs and says that he was just a kid and he needed a minute to get over it. Maybe you still haven't, Johnny says. James replies, maybe you're still a bastard. Inside, the family has brunch. Peter tells the brothers it's nice to have them under one roof. Then Johnny apologizes for Malia's passing. Nani tells him he should have come to her funeral, since he was like a son to her. Trying to lighten the mood, Nani asks Johnny if he is seeing anyone. He nods. Then Layla tells him that Walter would have really appreciated him being here. Johnny casually tells her that he is not here for him, but to find out who killed him, because he doesn't believe it was a hit and run. Layla asks the kids to go inside. Then Johnny tells them that he got attacked by the Yakuza syndicate at his home. James accuses him of always stirring up trouble wherever he goes. Johnny tells him he doesn't expect him to help. Nothing to help with, James replies. Johnny points out that those are the exact same words he told him about his mother. James asks him to come outside. Johnny gets up and follows him out. James then tells him it's absurd that he thinks Walter was killed. He points out that Johnny hadn't talked to him for over 20 years. And now he's sniffing around in his business, stirring up trouble. Johnny says he's a cop and adds that's what he does. Then he yells at him to trust him at least once. James shakes his head and says that he couldn't find his mother's killer, and now he's convinced that his father was also killed. Johnny just gives him a middle finger and leaves. He goes to a bar where a woman serves him a drink, saying he looks like he could use one. Then Alakai, one of Mr. K's syndicate men, appears and tells Johnny he didn't think he was dumb enough to come back, adding that Mr. K wants to see him. Johnny replies, "That old fuck is still alive?" and refuses to meet him. Suddenly, his vision blurs. He realizes he's been roofied. Mr. K greets him, then, without beating around the bush, says he doesn't like that Johnny came back. Mr. K tells Johnny that he hasn't forgotten that Johnny killed many of his men. Johnny fires back, saying it's because he killed his mother. Mr. K says maybe he did, or maybe he didn't. Still, he tells Johnny he doesn't belong here. Johnny points out that it's his home. "Not anymore," Mr. K replies. Then he brandishes his initials on his neck and orders him to leave Hawaii in 7 days, or he'll take a long swim in the ocean. Then they dump him on the beach. Meanwhile, James meets with Detective Rennert, who is handling Walter's case. Rennert offers his condolences for Walter's passing.
For your loss, truly. Thank you.
Then James asks if he can take a look at the police report, but Rennert simply tells him he won't find any useful information in there because there are no witnesses, and no one here talks to the cops over in Kalihi, where Walter died. "Traffic cam?" James asks. "There was one," Rennert says, "but it wasn't working at the time." "Pretty convenient," James adds, but Rennert tells him that due to budget cuts, they stopped fixing those things. James points out that Walter was a private detective with ties to the criminal underworld, was killed in a dead zone, and asks why no one thinks it is suspicious. Rennert tells him they believe it's a hit-and-run case. James asks for Walter's personal effects. Rennert instructs him to collect them at the front desk. James returns to his car and tears open the package. He finds Walter's keychain and his wallet. Then he takes out a receipt, and on the back there are some words and numbers written on it. Meanwhile, Johnny goes to Walter's small apartment to find any evidence that would prove he was murdered. He notices the apartment has been torn apart, as if someone was searching for something. He finds a gun. Then he hears footsteps and hides. The person enters and starts rummaging through the drawer. Johnny steps out and the man runs away. He gives chase and eventually catches him and punches him in the nose. The man cries out, asking for help.
Nobody help me!
It's all right, I'm a cop.
James demands to know who he is and why he's trying to rob Walter's apartment. The man protests, saying Walter was like a father to him. Johnny counters that Walter wasn't a father to anyone. The man asks, "How would you know?" Johnny admits he is Walter's son. The man's face lights up. "You're Johnny." The man then reveals he worked for Walter, hacking emails, tapping phones, and taking compromising photos for blackmail. When Johnny asks who would want Walter dead, he replies, "A lot of people. After all, he was a private detective." Johnny asks him what the last job Walter had him do was. The man says it was getting a job with Nui Loa, a high-end catering company. Johnny is confused about why Walter would ask him to get a job there. Then he asks for his name. The man replies, "Pika." Johnny tells Pika he will be working for him from now on, then rotates his nose to fix the bone. On the other side of Hawaii, James reaches the spot where Walter was killed. He looks around and finds a CCTV camera in front of a strip club. He goes inside and asks the employee to take a look at their security footage. He places some money on the table. The employee calls his boss. James puts down extra cash and asks if he can see the footage from a couple nights ago. They refuse, so he beats them up. Back with Johnny, Pika complains that twisting his nose didn't help. Johnny tells him to drink some beer. Then he notices a surfboard and asks Pika if Walter ever surfed. Pika shakes his head and says, "Walter had a bad knee." Johnny points out that the fins are installed wrong. As he adjusts them, something slips loose and drops to the floor. He picks it up and realizes it is a site plan with a government seal on it. He immediately calls his cousin, since she is an assistant to the governor. Johnny tells her he found a site plan with a government seal hidden inside a surfboard in Walter's apartment, but admits he has no idea what it's for. Nani tells him she can access the government database once she gets back to the office. She asks Johnny to text her the 8-digit file number printed on the plan. Just as Pika gets up to head to the hospital, James bursts in with his gun drawn. He looks at Pika and asks who he is. Johnny replies that Pika was Walter's assistant and asks James what he's doing here. "Same thing as you," James answers. Then he pulls out a flash drive and shows them footage of a blue van slamming into Walter and speeding off without stopping. The van also doesn't have a plate. James turns to Pika and asks for the name of the caterer again. "Nui Loa," Pika answers. "And who is he?" James asks. Johnny quickly fills him in and asks Pika for a list of every event they've catered in the past 2 weeks, and to keep an eye out for anything coming up soon. An hour later, James and Johnny leave the apartment together. That's when they're ambushed by members of the Yakuza syndicate. James and Johnny fight back as chaos erupts in the street. Gunfire breaks out. In the middle of the exchange, Johnny sets a gang car on fire, but the flames also spread and destroy James's car. James is furious. Johnny shrugs. "I just saved your life. You're welcome." At the station, Detective Rennert is far from pleased with the duo for taking out 4 Yakuza men. He looks at Johnny and assumes he is James's brother from Oklahoma, the cop. Johnny nods in acknowledgement. Rennert then says he is not exactly a cop now because Johnny is suspended with pay and pending an investigation for excessive force. James turns to Johnny and asks him to explain. But Johnny looks genuinely surprised and says, "Wait, I'm getting paid?" James then hands Rennert the security camera footage and informs him that the vehicle which hit Walter is a blue van visible in the clip. Rennert asks how he got it. "By doing your job," Johnny replies. Then he warns them to stop doing this wrecking crew nonsense. That evening, Nani tells the brothers that she tracked down the original architect and that the site plan is actually for a property on the east side of the island, up north. The project was commissioned by the Robichaux firm. Johnny asks who that is. Nani explains that Marcus Robichaux is a major developer, hotels and resorts across Hawaii, Asia, and Europe. She adds that his family controlled the island's sugarcane industry for generations. James studies the plan again and points something out. This is for a casino. Nani looks stunned and says, "That can't be right. Gambling is illegal here." James concludes that the only way they can get answers is by speaking to Marcus Robichaux directly. Nani tells them Marcus is hosting his annual fundraiser for the art museum tomorrow. Johnny stands and says he'll just get a motel for the night. Nani tells him to stay here, and James backs her up. The next morning, Johnny wakes up to Lonnie braiding his hair. Later, he heads downstairs and spots a sleek bike in the garage and decides to try it until James walks in and snaps at him to get off his bike. Johnny shrugs and says he's thinking about checking out the Robichaux construction site, but James still tells him to get off. Then he asks Johnny why he got suspended. Johnny hesitates, then admits the truth. He shot a meth dealer who was selling drugs to kids. James nods, then pulls the cover off another bike, one that belonged to their father, Walter. Together, they ride to the construction site, but when they arrive, they're confused to see a group of people living on the land where construction is supposed to happen. James approaches one of them and asks who owns this land. A woman behind them answers calmly, "Everyone." James turns to her and says he didn't know a community lived here. "Nobody does," the woman replies. She tells them that Aha Moku is responsible for this land and the government has no ownership over it. Then, Johnny gets a call from Pika, who says a cop has pulled a blue van out of the surf off Makapuu. Rennert tells them that Simi Iona is a low-level government accountant who disappeared 3 days ago and asks if they recognize the name.
Oh? Nope.
He tells them the accountant might be behind the hit and run, but Johnny points out that someone went to the trouble of getting the car into the water and that there was no license plate. Rennert nods and shows them the list of blue vans registered on the island. Johnny asks if they can keep it, but Rennert says no, saying it is police business. Johnny tells Pika to look into Hayashi Imports because it is the only Japanese name on the detective's blue van list. Pika then tells them they need to get to the Robichaux party. James points out they aren't invited, but Pika tells him he knows a caterer. They arrive at the Marcus Robichaux party. Pika tells the brothers that Hayashi Imports is owned by numerous Japanese holding companies. James concludes that it must be connected to the Yakuza. He tells the brothers to split up to avoid drawing any suspicion. Johnny spots a woman, then agrees that Pika is right and goes after her. He starts flirting with the woman. Inside, Pika tells James to wash dishes. Otherwise, he'll look like a narc. A man then asks James for a plate. Meanwhile, Johnny introduces himself to the woman. Surprised, she asks, "Hale? As in Walter Hale?" Johnny then asks if she knew him, but the woman asks Johnny why he is speaking in the past tense. Because he is dead, the woman admits she hired Walter to investigate her husband's activities to see if he was cheating. Johnny asks her husband's name. She reveals that Marcus Robichaux is her husband and says her name is Monica. She tells Johnny she is planning to get a divorce, and without some leverage, things won't go well for her. So that's why she hired Walter. Then she instructs Johnny to meet her tomorrow at the penthouse in Waikiki and promises to explain everything there. Inside, James takes the plate when the man is distracted. The man then comes in front of him and James hands him the card saying he dropped it.
Yeah, she imports. Small world.
The man asks him what he knows about it. He tells them he knows they misplaced a blue van. The man asks if he is a cop. U.S. Navy, James replies, then asks the guy what does the Yakuza want with Robichaux. The man laughs and says there is a famous Japanese saying, "The child of a frog is still just a frog." James asks what it means. He explains that it means frogs never look both ways when crossing the street. Then the man says he looks forward to seeing James again. James watches as security drags Johnny away, and moments later, another pair of men asks James to come with them. They take both brothers to Marcus Robichaux's office. Marcus asks who they are. James replies that they are Walter Hale's sons. Marcus tells them he paid Walter in full, including a bonus.
Who hired Walter?
I did, yeah.
Johnny then reveals that Walter is dead. Marcus says, "Sorry." But Johnny replies, "You don't look sorry." He tells Johnny that if he's implying that he killed Walter, then he would be dead wrong. James asks Marcus why he hired Walter. Marcus admits he suspected his wife was cheating, so he hired Walter to follow her. But it turned out she wasn't, after Walter showed him the evidence. Marcus orders Johnny to put the grenade down, explaining that it is from World War I. Then, Marcus asks them to leave. The brothers then discuss the information they found at the party. The next morning, Johnny arrives at their meeting spot and discovers Monica is dead, framed as a suicide. Furious, he storms Marcus's house and takes down the guards at the entrance, but then one of them zaps him. Marcus comes out and says he is starting to dislike him. Johnny says he knew Marcus is the one who killed his wife and also his father. Marcus simply says he is confused and asks the guards to call the police. At the police station, Peter enters the custody room. Johnny assumes James called him, but Peter shakes his head and says Nani did. He sighs and tells Johnny that he convinced Marcus to drop all the charges. Johnny argues that Marcus killed his wife, but Peter says that even if he did, it wouldn't be Johnny's business and advises him to let the police handle the case. Then, Peter tells Johnny that he loved Walter, but admits there was a darkness in him that led to the destruction of the good things in his life, like Maria and Kim, and even affected Johnny and James. He adds that he sees the same darkness in Johnny too, but Johnny has something Walter didn't, a brother. He thanks his uncle. Outside, James is waiting for him, but Johnny ignores him. James tells him that fucking shit up isn't going to bring back his mother. They both fight, letting out their resentment and anger. James takes control and starts punching Johnny, then stops midway. James asks him what the fuck is wrong with him. Johnny says the same and asks what kind of man would abandon his little brother when he needed him most, only to send him away. James argues that the Mr. K's syndicate was going to kill Johnny after what he did to his men. That's why he says he sent him away, to protect him. Johnny tells him he doesn't know what it's like to stare at your dying mother lying in the street and she's staring at your eyes and says it haunts him. Johnny hoarsely says he couldn't protect her and he only had James, and James didn't help him. James apologizes to Johnny, saying that he shouldn't have given up on him. Then he asks why Johnny is chasing after Walter's killer when Walter wasn't a father to him. Johnny says he couldn't find his mother's killer, but at least he wants to find who killed his father, saying someone has to give them justice. They got me too, James adds, and says Johnny does too. At home, Layla scolds them. Johnny tells her that James started it. She looks at James and reminds him that he's supposed to be the adult here. James pulls his wife close. Just then, Johnny receives a call from his girlfriend and shows it to them. Valentina asks why the house is a crime scene, and James admits he had completely forgotten about it. She brushes it off, saying she doesn't care, and explains that she stopped by to collect her mail, and mentions that Johnny has a package from Hawaii. He asks her to see what it is. She says it's a thumb drive. He then asks her to deliver the package to Hawaii. Furious, Valentina reminds him that he didn't want to go to Hawaii when she wanted to go. In the end, he convinces her, and she arrives in Hawaii. Johnny tries to hug her, but she dodges and tells him she's only here for a day. "Is that your brother?" Valentina asks. James nods and introduces himself. She comments that he looks like Johnny, but smarter. Then she hands him the drive. James says he likes her. In the car, Valentina doesn't believe that Johnny's estranged father, Walter, was killed over the drive. Pika connects it, but says he can't access it because of a banking firewall. Valentina explains that it's a cold wallet, digitally encrypted, and that the drive serves as the key. Johnny assumes that whoever owns the account needs the drive to access the money, and suggests that if Pika can hack it, they'll get the funds and uncover the owner's identity. Valentina nods, but explains that he can't do that without a seed phrase, a randomly generated set of 12 words known only to the account holder. James then hands over a receipt and tells Pika to try these words. Johnny looks at James and he explains that it was found among Walter's personal belongings. Just then, a helicopter swoops in overhead and opens fire. Johnny shoots back at the chopper. Valentina tells James to let her drive, and he agrees. Valentina manages to drive seamlessly amid the bullets and traffic. Then, a motorbike chases after them. Valentina runs them over, but the two riders grab onto the car. James takes care of one while Johnny handles the other. They both manage to kill them. James then turns his attention to the helicopter, taking out the men inside. The chopper spirals out of control and veers toward them, but Valentina narrowly steers them to safety. James is worried since he damaged his wife's car.
It's not that bad, bro.
Pika informs them he got in. Valentina takes a look and says, $12 million have been going into the same account for 3 years. The money went through several offshore accounts and she finally manages to see who it went to. It's Peter Maho. She asks if they know him. Pika tells her he is the governor. Johnny and James finally put the pieces together. Robichaux needed someone to legalize gambling so he can build a casino on Hawaiian homeland. For $12 million, he buys himself a governor and then brings in the Yakuza for extra muscle. But Walter was digging for dirt on Marcus because Monica Robichaux hired him, and he stumbled upon Robichaux's plan. So Walter found Simi Iona to download all those dirty transactions, maybe to blackmail or whistleblow. Either way, he gave Peter the drive. James says Peter must have figured it out, so he called Robichaux, and Robichaux called the Yakuza, who tortured the accountant until he gave up Walter's name. They return to the house. James calls his wife, but her phone rings inside. Alarmed, he searches the rooms and finds the children hiding in the bathroom, terrified. Kai tells him that some men took their mother. James hands the kids over to Valentina. Moments later, Johnny receives a video call from Marcus. Marcus reveals that he has Layla and Nani and demands the drive in exchange for the girls' lives. James then takes Johnny to a secret weapons room. He tells him to stock up the bag. They begin picking out guns. That night, they reach Marcus's place, and the duo take out the guards with cold, ruthless precision. They make it to the front door and eliminate the remaining security. James shoots at one of the men inside, but the glass appears bulletproof. He takes him down anyway. Suddenly, the power goes out. Marcus assumes the boys have arrived and orders one of his men to check. The man sees the wires have been cut, then spots all the dead bodies. Before he tries to warn Marcus, Johnny kills him and casually greets Marcus, saying he'll see him in a second. Marcus orders the Yakuza to handle the situation. The gang members step outside, only to be ruthlessly taken down by James, who takes them down with lethal efficiency. The two of them reach the basement and free the girls. Nani tells them that Marcus ran outside. James escorts the girls out, but Layla urges him to go back and fight alongside Johnny. He returns and is immediately attacked by one of the Yakuza gang members. A brutal fight erupts. Meanwhile, Johnny stops Marcus from escaping, and the two engage in a fierce one-on-one battle. Inside, James manages to kill the man, but Johnny is badly beaten by Marcus. Marcus grabs the gun and admits to killing Walter, sneering that Johnny is nothing. He raises the gun to finish him. Then, Johnny pulls out the grenade he swiped earlier. It detonates. At that moment, James rushes to save his brother, diving into the water and pulling him to safety. Eventually, Peter Maho is arrested. The family finally enjoys time on the beach. Johnny begins to let go of his anger for not saving his mother and comes to terms with it. Then, Mr. K arrives and comments that Johnny is still on the island. "It's my island too," Johnny says. Mr. K nods. "Everything's cool now," he says. He praises them for stopping the gambling scheme before it could happen and admits he already knew about it but chose not to intervene, refusing to start a war with Yakuza. "So you let us fight them?" Johnny asks. Mr. K nods. He then gives Johnny the name of the man who killed his mother, clarifying that he isn't part of his syndicate. He shows the name to James. He tells Johnny that whatever he decides to do, he has his back. Johnny admits he had imagined that one day he would talk with Walter, maybe even finding a way to forgive him. James suggests that Walter may have sent the flash drive to get him back home. "12 million, James mutters. "12 million to buy back our childhood," Johnny replies.